Hello everyone, my name is Sumit and I welcome all of you to DSP Self-Learning Video Broadcast Solution. Today I am going to demonstrate you how to invoke a workflow using a dialog in Dynamic CRM. In my previous video, I have already told you or I have already demonstrated you that how to invoke a dialog in Dynamic CRM. So this video will be the additional video in the previous video. So in this tutorial, we'll be going to see that how can we invoke a workflow by using a dialog in Dynamics CRM. So let's switch to Dynamics CRM and the steps involved in this tutorial. First of all, we'll be going to create a workflow, and then later on we'll be going to invoke that workflow by using a dialog. So let's switch to Dynamics CRM first of all. And the first step which I'm going to perform here is I'm going to create a workflow here. So let's see how to create a workflow. So to create a workflow, I'm going to switch to settings, and in settings I'm going to click solutions. So let's create a new solution in this application. So I click on new to create a new solution. Then I'll give a name to my solution. Let's say DSP solution, and the publisher, I'll go with the default publisher. The version 6.0.1, and I'll save it. And once we save this solution, we'll be going to create a process within in this solution. So I click on process, new, and the process name is, let's suppose I'm going to create a workflow here, and this workflow will work, or this workflow will execute whenever we invoke a dialog in a contact entity, and it will send an email to the selected contact. So I write send email to contact. Category will be workflow. Entity will be contact, and OK. Here I'm going to select as a child process because I want this workflow to be executed as a child process from within a dialog. So that's why I select here child process, and the scope I set it to organization level. Then I'm going to add few steps here. So my requirement is that this workflow will send an email to the contact. So I'll add here send email and add a step, add a description, send email to contact. Click on set properties because we need to add an email template. So if you either you can use the existing template. So in my existing videos I've already explained how to set up an email template in Dynamics CRM, or we can set up a new template here itself. So it should be from on behalf of the owing user. So I select owing user here, add it to the contact, subject, thanks for registration, and here we can say dear contact name. So I want contact first name and last name. So I select here first name, or we can go with the full name as well. So contact full name. Thanks for registering with us. Regards, yes. And I'll save and close it. So once we have created this workflow, I'm going to save it and activate it. because without activation this workflow will not work. So I click on activate to activate this workflow and click on activate. So this workflow will activate. Now in next step we'll be going to create a dialog box. So let's close this first. So I close it, and again I'm going to create a new process, and in this process I give a name, contact dialog, contact dialog. Category will be dialog. Entity will be contact because I want that this dialog to be execute or invoke only from this contact entity. Okay. Now in this dialog I'm going to add steps. So I click on steps and click on page. Add a page first of all, and verify from user. And in this I'll add a step here, prompt and response. So I'm going to get the confirmation from the user whether the user wants to execute that workflow or not. So run workflow, set properties, just I'll say invoke workflow, and the response type will be option set radio buttons, and right, and I'll select this item 1 yes and no. Save and close, because I'm going to get the input from the user, and once I get the input from the user, based on that I'm going to invoke that particular dialog or that workflow. So select this page and start child. So I'll check condition that if the input is yes. So if the input is yes, then only that workflow will invoke. So I write here check user input and click on if condition to configure it, to add the condition here. So I'm going to add a condition. Select here if the run workflow, basically this run workflow response label is equals to yes. If the response label is equal to yes, then only it will invoke. So I add a condition here, and this will run the child workflow. So I select child workflow, the contact, and the child workflow which we have created, the send email to contact. So there are two. So that's the recent one, the recent workflow. So I select it and save it. That's all. So let's test it whether it works or not. So first of all, I'll save it and activate it. Click on activate. Close it. Publish all customization. This is very important because the changes which you have made in this application, that if you want that all the changes should get affected, so you need to click on publish all customization. And once all the changes once all the customization has been published, you can save and close it. And for testing, we can switch to sales and contact, and let's test it. So to test our dialog box, I have already created a record, and the email ID of that record I have set as my record, my email ID, because I'm going to test it. So I select this particular record, and my requirement is, let's suppose a customer care executive would like to send an email to the selected records, selected contact, so that executive can select more than one record as well. But in this case, I'm going to select only one record. So I selected one contact here, Jim Klein, and his email is sumit.goel@bsptrainings.com. That's my mail ID. So I click on this particular icon over here, click on Start Dialog, and I click on Start Dialog. I'll get a message, or I'll get a dialog box, look up record. So there are three dialogues available. So that's the dialog which we have created just now. That's the most recent dialog, contact dialog. I select it, click on Add, and a dialog box will appear. That's the same dialog box which we created just now. It will prompt a message to the user, invoke workflow, and based on the user input, that workflow will execute. So I go with yes. So my input is yes, and I click on next and click on finish. Now this dialog box, first of all, it will check the input from the user, and based on the current user input, or based on the user's input, it will invoke that workflow. So let's test our mailbox. So you can see I have received an email from the mailbox that dear Jim Klein, that's the name, and thanks for registration. So that's the mail which I have received after that workflow has been invoked. So that's how we can invoke workflow by using a dialog in a dynamic CRM. That's all in this video. If you have any queries, you can visit our website www.bisptrainings.com, or you can subscribe our YouTube channel for more videos. Have a nice day ahead. Goodbye.